Good day, everyone. My name is Vince Gelman. Thank you for joining me today. So I live in Canada, and next year in March, it's going to be legal for people who have been diagnosed with a mental disorder, and that is their sole condition. If it's their sole condition, they can seek assisted dying. They can seek assisted dying. They can end their life because it is simply too unbearable for them to continue to go on with their depression or their anxiety or whatever they're struggling with, which obviously is going to translate into other issues like can they have a job? Can they have fulfilling relationships? Can they pay their bills? Can they take care of themselves in the most basic way? So life has just become so overwhelming for them. They've been diagnosed with a mental disorder. It is their sole condition. And now they can legally seek assisted dying. So on the one hand, that is their absolute right to do so. It's none of my business to say you shouldn't be able to do that. That is your right to do that. That's your personal freedom. And on the other hand, there is a larger global agenda right now around depopulation. And I wouldn't be surprised that this law being passed is linked to that darker agenda of depopulation because the dark forces want less people on the planet, so it's much easier to control us and usher us into their Hunger Games vision. Now, I'm not going to go down the road in this video around quote-unquote conspiracy theories. For me, what's more important is I want to talk about trauma. I want to talk about what I think is a total myth, and that is the myth of mental disorders and the myth of mental illness, the myth of mental, making this all mental. We are so ready to graduate, to merge or mature beyond this narrative of mental. Why is it all mental? Why is it so much about the mind, the brain? Do we not have an existence beneath the head? So, if we call it mental illness, if we call it a mental disorder, who does this benefit? It benefits Big Pharma because this is about a chemical imbalance, so to speak, so they say, in the brain, and we need to fix that by giving you chemicals so that you have more serotonin, more dopamine. We need to fix you up with this medication. So these psychopharmaceuticals, these psychostimulants, these antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, it is big money. It is big money. We are also a people who want quick fixes. Fix me up. And I don't want to do the work. I don't want to do the courageous, heroic, vulnerable work of going into my body. I don't want to do the courageous, heroic, inner work of going into my body and going into those shadows and taking responsibility for my trauma, my programming, and my history. I don't want that responsibility, so give me medication and fix me up, doc. Doctor, fix me. We have 8 minutes with our doctor. How much can a doctor really do for someone in 8 minutes? These people who are seeking assisted dying, they're on waiting lists to see counselors. They're struggling to pay their bills. They're bouncing from one doctor to another. They're getting different diagnoses for different disorders. My heart goes out to them. My heart goes out to you, my brothers and sisters, really. My heart breaks because ultimately what you want is to feel loved, in my opinion. You want to feel held. You want to feel loved. You want to feel safe. You want to know you belong. And we live in such a immature, infantile archaic, broken society that does not recognize the roots of what we call mental illness and mental disorder and mental health, mental. Well, here's a crazy idea. Maybe the person who's struggling with that, with these different diagnoses, whether it's ADHD or I have a whole list I'm going to get into. Maybe the people who are struggling with their depression, their anxiety, maybe it's unresolved childhood trauma. Maybe they didn't get their needs met when they were a kid. Maybe they were highly neglected. Maybe they were physically abused, sexually abused. I've spoken of the numbers of people who are sexually abused. The statistics are high, the number of children who are sexually abused. We have to also add the rising amount of sexual exploitation online now as well. That's going up. The abuse online. Children are not getting their needs met. Children are growing up in homes where they feel incredibly alone. We must also remember that there is the ancestral inheritance. We inherit trauma and programming, shadow imprints from our lineage. And we don't come in here as blank slates. We come in here with our past life experiences. We come in here with our karma. We come in here with painful memories of past lives, of being persecuted, of being tortured. We come in here with old programming, old fears. We don't arrive here as a blank slate. Therapists take note of that because therapists put such a heavy emphasis on childhood experiences. We don't come here as a blank slate. Let us also remember, as part of childhood trauma, childhood adversity, there's the trauma that occurs in utero. There is birth trauma. There's what happens to a child after birth if they're put into an incubator. That is devastating to a newborn, to be put in an incubator for 6 weeks. I want to let you know that I am a highly trained healer. I am highly trained in trauma resolution. I had a full thriving practice as a registered therapeutic counselor. I was a certified breath worker. I did breath work, I did somatic healing, somatic therapy, and despite having a full practice, I closed it down. I was good at what I did, but I closed it down because now I do online healing and activation ceremonies. I'm not going to get into that now, but I'm going to talk about that at the end because I want that to be an option for people that's actually very cheap. I purposely keep my rates low, and this is not about marketing for me. I don't need the business. If you watch my videos, I barely mention what I do. This is about waking up from this mental thing. How many children in utero have a parent that doesn't want them? The parents find out that it's a girl when they wanted a boy, and they're disappointed, and that child within suddenly feels that growing child within the womb feels not wanted. How many birth complications are there? Forceps, heavy medication, C-section, complications, stresses that impact the child, difficulty getting through the birth canal, strain on the child, stress on the child. Birth trauma is a real thing. We take the child out, we cut that umbilical cord far too soon. That umbilical cord should not be cut that soon. That child should be resting, that newborn should be resting on their mother's chest, beautifully resting there. They're held and loved, and let's leave that umbilical cord alone for a lot longer. Children are not getting their attachment needs met. I talk about that a lot. I'm not going to really go into attachment theory today because I have done so a lot. Please check out my last 2 videos. But children are not getting their attachment needs met at home. They have busy, stressed out parents. They have 2 parents working now. Back in the day, it was just father. Now both parents are working. The parents barely have enough energy to look at each other in the eyes. They're so tired. They're living without any sex. They're burnt out. They can barely make it through 30 minutes of a Netflix video after the kids have finally fallen asleep. They're passing out on the couch. They're burnt out. They don't have the help and the support they need. That's affecting the child's attachment needs. Children are not getting their attachment needs at school. How could they? In a 30-to-1, 40-to-1 ratio of students to teachers. Children are growing up without their emotional needs met, their physical needs met. They're being spanked, they're being hit. And yes, spanking is physical abuse. It is physical abuse. Let us not mess around with that anymore. This is not to make people feel guilty. It is physical abuse. It is hitting. Remember, for a child, small is big. Small is big. We must stop hitting children. And parents are hitting children because they're stressed themselves and they're burnt out and they're at wit's end. And we're making this about mental illness, a mental disorder. Come on. It's time to wake up, everyone. There's something called trauma. There's something called programming. There's something called past lives. There's also the food we eat that is so ridden with toxicity. Do you not think that affects us? The fact that children are being indoctrinated with all this crap in school? It's crap. 99% of what children learn in school, they'll never, ever use. Especially today, with the way the world is going, it is falling apart. It is rapidly changing and falling apart. We are trying to educate people on old world curriculum when that old world is falling apart. Children are on technology. They're on TikTok. Toxic talk. I mean, it is so toxic. They are on social media. They're being bombarded. They're not out in nature as much as they used to be. A study came out a while back that showed that children spend half the amount of time outdoors in comparison to prisoners. Prisoners on average get 2 hours of time outdoors. Children are spending 1 hour. They're on technology. They finished the school in grade 5. They got homework. They got to go home now and do homework. Okay, so you go to work as an adult. You finish at what? 4:35. Do you come home with more work? So if you're not taking your work home with you, why should a kid in grade 5 have homework? No, what the child needs is home play, not homework. Or outdoor play, not homework. Play, everyone, play. Play is the most powerful therapy. The reason why I get emotional around play is because I used to teach remembering to play, and I've written extensively about it. And I am still considered an international authority on play. And play is the best therapy for children. And whether that is them playing outdoors in wide open spaces, unstructured, unsupervised play where they're listening to their own intuition because it's unstructured and unsupervised, or at home with parents on their hands and knees, playing with them, meeting the child in their world, following the child. Hey, mom, hey, dad, let's build this. Great, let's do it. Yes, let's. Isn't that what kids want to hear? Yes, let's do it. That means I love and honor your world, and I want to dance in it with you. Isn't that what kids are hungering for? That's attachment. You want to know why people are struggling with mental illness? It's because they're lacking that. They're lacking that. They're lacking love. They're lacking affection. They're lacking connection. Mental Health Canada, Mental Health World, wake up. Get out of the box of mental illness. Get out of the box of psychiatry. Get out of the box of disorder after disorder after disorder. The American Psychiatric Association has created and creates regular updates for what they call the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, which at this time has about 300 classifications. Let me read a few of them to you, okay? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, social communication disorder, social anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, hoarding disorder, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, and lo and behold, what we have here, gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria. Well, I invite you to look at my last video about that. Disorder after, how can we possibly have 300 disorders? So the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, which classifies these 300 disorders, it is a big moneymaker for the American Psychiatric Association. I'm not saying that they're driven by money, okay? I want to make that clear. But what I'm saying to you is this, is that it is a moneymaker nonetheless. And it is sold to doctors and big pharma, insurance companies, psychiatrists, therapists. They use that to diagnose, to classify their patients, to classify different conditions so they can know how to work with them based, whether it's in the system of health or economics or whatever it might be. Insurance. 300 disorders. 300. Okay, so imagine a tree. And this tree has 300 branches. 300 branches. And each one of those branches is one of these disorders. Okay. So, instead of looking at the branches, what we need to do is see where they all converge and what they have their roots in. What do these all have their roots in? Trauma, programming, adverse childhood experiences, past life experiences, ancestral imprints inherited, coded in the DNA. Let's get to the root. What's going to happen to the DSM if we get to the root? This book will suddenly become this thick. You see, we are in our infantile, immature consciousness, we are a society of over-compartmentalization. Over-compartmentalization. Increasingly, medical students, what they're doing is they're making their specialties more and more and more narrow. More and more narrow. Instead of considering the whole body, the holistic body, they are focusing on one very narrow aspect of the body without considering the larger whole. Maybe it's inflammation in the whole body and not just this little area over here. Maybe it's trauma. Maybe it's energetic imbalances that are throughout the body. What a crazy idea. Let's look at the whole instead of narrowing it on a part. When we focus in on these disorders and then classify someone struggling and give them a label with a particular disorder, we are compartmentalizing them. And then we give medication for that disorder. It is no wonder these people who are seeking assisted dying, they're going from one practitioner to another, because they are dealing with symptomology. Just like our allopathic medical system deals with symptomology. It is absolute ignorance. It is absolute disservice to our people, our brothers and sisters who need so much more now. And the people who are in these systems, who are running them, it is your responsibility, my friends, and I say this respectfully, it is your responsibility to wake up to the holistic picture, get out of your narrow paradigms, and do your inner work. You do your inner work. You have to heal yourself. Healer, heal thyself. Do you know how many healing practitioners, therapists, psychiatrists out there are trying to heal themselves through their clients? They're trying to heal themselves through their clients. This is the challenge about finding a good counselor. It's because counselors, so many of them, most of them, go into it because they're struggling with so much trauma, with what's called disorganized attachment, a disorganized attachment pattern. They are struggling with so much trauma in them, and so they try to resolve that trauma by helping others. But what they're doing, if they don't do their own work, and a lot of it, they're projecting on their clients. They're projecting on their patients. They're trying to heal themselves through their clients. How much of this is happening in healthcare? It's why healthcare is actually more sick care than healthcare. You have to do your work, everyone. That's what these times are about. It's time to take responsibility for your own health. And that doesn't mean, oh, I'm just going to go see a counselor 3 times. Because this is what people do. Yeah, I decided to go do some counseling. I saw a counselor 3 times. No. It's a life commitment. You go long term. I've done 20 plus years of intensive healing on myself. I have seen, you want to know how many practitioners I've seen? You want to know how many types of practitioners I've seen? Now, I don't go hard into it anymore. I've reached a place where I've sort of graduated from that. But I took responsibility for my own body, my own soul, my own mind. And one thing I know from personal and professional experience is that this is about trauma and programming. To call it a mental illness or mental disorder, mental health is an absolute illusion. It's absolute rubbish. Stop feeding this idea, health professionals of Canada and health professionals of the world. Wake up and serve your people by seeing the larger picture. No wonder we're offering people assisted dying now. You know, it is akin to what I said in my last video about saying, okay, we have children who have so-called gender dysphoria, who are gender confused. Let's put them under the knife and give them all these toxic medical procedures of hormone treatments and puberty blockers. Let's destroy their body. That is akin to assisted dying. It's not addressing the core issue, which in the last video I said, when children have an insecure attachment at home, it fosters an insecure identity. And when we have an insecure identity, we seek another identity. Hence the need to become transgender. I actually was going to cover a whole bunch of other stuff in this video, and I don't think I can do that now in this video. I think I need to focus just on this. I was going to go much more into the nuances of trauma and trauma resolution, but here's what I'm going to do instead. I am very supportive of talk therapy. I think talk therapy is great. The very first person I saw for my health, which was in the late 90s, was a woman who was a talk therapist, and she had a massive positive impact on me. But what I want you all to understand is talk therapy is very, very level 1. And a big reason is this, is because so much of our trauma is pre-verbal. So you're trying to resolve pre-verbal trauma through a verbal methodology. You can only get so far. So talk therapy can only do so much. Somatic therapy, body-based therapy, therapy that has an understanding of the nervous system and how to work with the nervous system and how to work with incomplete survival responses, how to move trauma through the system. And that was my training. That is a much more advanced way of working with people. Breath work, absolutely. As long as it's a breath work that doesn't overstimulate the body and that is trauma informed. I'm certified in a particular breath work. We don't want to overstimulate the body. There's breathwork practices out there which put too much breath into the body, in my opinion. They overstimulate the body. Let's remember that the nature of a traumatized experience is too much, too fast, too soon. Something happened that was too much, too fast, too soon, and now we're putting too much, too fast, too soon breath in the body. No, that can work backwards. It can actually overstimulate and re-traumatize someone. Psychedelics, ayahuasca. I've done a lot of work with ayahuasca. I've done a lot of work with mushrooms. Here's what I say to you around that. I'm not going to encourage you to do it. I'm also not going to discourage you to do it. But what I will say is this. If you work with psychedelics, you need to make sure someone is with you who's skilled, sitting next to you, because something big can come up. Number two, if you do ayahuasca and you work with a shaman, you have to make sure your shaman is grounded, sensitive, skilled, wise. There's a whole range of quality of shamans out there, just like there's a whole range of quality of therapists out there. You need to make sure you find a good shaman, and I do not make recommendations on shamans. In fact, I don't make any recommendations anymore. I'm not for or against psychedelics, but they made a massive difference for me. But you have to understand you need to be prepared to do them. And it's a really good idea if you're going to go work with psychedelics that you have done at least a few years of solid inner work first. Because once you start working with psychedelics, you're going to an entirely different level, and it can unlock significant stuff. And you need to be centered enough in yourself. You need to be regulated enough in your nervous system to handle what can possibly emerge once you start working with that very intense and ancient, shamanic, and truly sacred medicine. Now, I want to end by saying this, and I say this to all my brothers and sisters out there, all my friends, my true soul family, because you are all my family, and I care about you. I care about you, really I do. I'm making this video because I care about you. I'm not motivated by money. I hope you get that. Look at my previous videos. I rarely talk about what I do for work. I'm pretty humble. I'm pretty inconspicuous about what I do. But what I do is I lead online healing and activation ceremonies where I transmit different kinds of higher consciousness frequencies to people around the world. For example, I transmit starlight. I transmit the consciousness of different archangels, different ascended masters, like Kuan Yin, for instance, Kuan Yin or Isis or Hathor of the Egyptian lineage. I work with different crystals. I transmit the energy of diamond light, of sapphire, of emerald. I work a lot with spirit animals. In fact, in a few hours, I'm doing a ceremony with the spider, with the great spirit of the spider. It's called Weaving, Receiving Spider. So I transmit these consciousness to people on Zoom. So I have people from all over the world, and they come on Zoom and they receive a powerful transmission. I charge 77 Canadian, which is about 60 American for this. I'm completely undercharging. I quit my full practice to do this because this is a powerful transmission, and it is advanced shamanism. It is advanced shamanism. You can see the stories of transformation on my website, the healing stories of my clients. A powerful transmission does the heavy lifting for you. That's the thing. If you go to therapy, and I'm not against therapy, I'm very supportive of therapy, I'm very supportive of ayahuasca, I'm very supportive of mushrooms, but if you work through those modalities, you're likely going to slog through a lot of stuff. You may have memories come up out of nowhere. We need to expedite things now on the planet if you haven't noticed. So this work that I'm doing does the heavy lifting for you. And another reason why I did this is because in my counseling practice or my breathwork practice, I could see 5-6 people a day. Well, now I can do one Zoom session and I can have 20-30 people on it. More than that, they don't need to leave their home. So this allows a single mother living in a very small town up north to receive this. It's cheaper for her. My counseling practice, I was charging $130 for a private. If you go see a counselor, A good counselor, you're paying around $150. I've consistently undercharged, even $130 I undercharge. I undercharge now as well. $77 is far less than what it's worth, but it's not about the money for me. And so I am offering this to you as an option, not because I need your cash, not because I need your money, because I need to be of service. And I want people to know this is available. So I will put a link in the description for you. This work that I do gets to the quantum roots. It's about transmuting, alchemizing, clearing trauma and programming at their roots, at the quantum level, in the DNA, at the subtle level. You want to know why people are going from one therapist to another? Well, it's because you're not getting at the roots. And when you start working with complex trauma like sexual abuse, you definitely need, in my opinion, a more sophisticated, advanced model of healing, something more shamanistic. That is my opinion. Because sexual trauma, especially when you're young, is incredibly devastating on the heart, on the nervous system, on the brain, on the psychology, and thus the identity of the individual. So what I do is I offer this advanced way of healing, and it's accessible, and it is not that expensive. Do I have anything else I want to say? I think I'm going to leave it at that. That feels pretty complete to me. So, and I also want to say I have so many resources on my website, tons of writing, tons and tons of writing that is supportive as well. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you for your kindness with your comments. I see people leaving comments. I appreciate them. Please subscribe. Please share. Please take good care of yourself. And I will see you when I see you. Take care. Bye.